person for the Global Sumud Flotilla in Australia. I'm joined today with 4 of those who sailed in the Global Sumud Flotilla with Australia: Abubakir Rafiq, Tribe, Juliet, Lamont, and Surya, McEwen. I think their resilience and courage is a testament, but it really shows how urgent and needed this movement is. It did begin back in June with the global march to Gaza in Cairo and the Sumud convoy, where thousands gathered to break Israel's illegal siege by land. There was all sorts of sabotage, coordinated obstruction, and we took it to the ocean, and we got very, very, very close. While the boats were being intercepted, Palestinians got to fish their waters for the first time in so long. Over 100,000 people registered for the Global Sumud Flotilla. 500 sailed, 5 were on land to coordinate, so only 1% of those who applied actually sailed. And the movement grew beyond our wildest dreams, because Palestine connects all the struggles: racism, anti-colonialism, housing, the environment. And we answered the call that came from inside Gaza. For over 76 years, Palestinians have endured persecution, ethnic cleansing, and now genocide. And as a signatory to the UN Charter and the Geneva Convention, Australia has both a moral and a legal obligation. So we call upon our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Senator Penny Wong to step up to the plate. We must sanction Israel now. There must be an arms embargo. It is time to end the two-way arms trade with this rogue pariah state committing genocide. Sumud is in our name because we are steadfast with Palestine, and we will keep going until true justice, true liberation, until Palestine is free. Thank you.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming today. My name's Tribe, and I was one of the participants on the Global Sumud Flotilla. It was a great honour and a privilege for me to be involved in this process of the flotilla, because myself, like many Australians, for the last 2 years I've been in a state of rage at having to sit and watch our government complicit in this genocide perpetrated by an insane evil war state against the state of Palestine. The great action of the flotilla, and very successful action, was to foreground this issue. I live in the Middle East. I've lived there for 20 years. I see very clearly the truth of the situation between Israel and Gaza. I come back to Australia, and in particular I see the incredible disconnect with the story that gets told, the lying narrative that gets told through our influenced government and our corrupt mainstream media, that tells a story of Israel having a right to defend itself, rather than the true story of Israel being an insane criminal state perpetrating a genocide, not just for two years, but for 70 years against a defenseless community. It is so important to bring this message, and the flotilla action foregrounded that, and to bring this message to the populations of Australia and to America and to the UK, because gratifyingly, large sections of this population are now starting to see the truth, but there are still large sections that are believing the old lying narrative that continues to be perpetrated by the corrupt governments and the media under the control of this insane criminal war state. It's so important to bring that message to those people. It is and for the people to start realizing the hypocrisy of our government, that in the one hand recognizes the state of Palestine, but on the other hand continues to send war weapons for the destruction of Palestine. This is a movement that is growing, it is increasing day by day, and it is so important because, as we've seen, gratifyingly, we've had some relief for the people of Palestine over the last couple of days, but the peace deal, which is largely written by Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, Netanyahu, and Tony Blair, clearly these are the arch enemies. These are the arch criminals of genocide and the arch criminals of war for profit. As we've already seen, the humanitarian aid is not getting through. The UN is not able to set up its new distribution points. The Qataris and the Turks are talking loud, but they're actually taking no action. It does not appear that there will be any change for the Palestinians going forward, and that Israel and America, as usual, have been completely untrustworthy and treacherous in making this deal. And so we call on the Australian public to start engaging in civic action, corporate action, economic disruption in the same way as Italy is doing, and certain other countries. This is the only way to force our governments to do the right thing, to be on the right side of history, to boycott Israel, to sanction Israel, to remove the Israeli embassy out of Australia, and to bring truth and justice back into our political process. And so Australians, regardless of how they feel about the Middle East, they should absolutely be concerned about the truth and justice in our political process, which has been completely corrupted by this insane criminal war state. Again, it's an honour and a privilege for me to have been involved in this flotilla, and I will continue, as we all will, as long as this injustice continues to prevail. Thank you all.
Hi everyone, I'm Juliet, Lamont, and I was also one of 500 ordinary people who decided, after almost 2 years of watching live stream genocide on our phones and despairing and going to the Sunday rallies and lobbying our government, I just felt at a loss as a mother of 2 daughters who I do not want to live in a world that is this unjust and this violent. And also, as a mother, my heart breaks for the children in Palestine that even though there's a pretend ceasefire happening, they're being killed as we speak. So, you know, my personal experience, I sort of feel like I don't really want to talk about it, but I also want to give some truth telling. And it's not a drop in the ocean compared to what the Palestinians are enduring in prison, in their homes, in refugee camps, during this outrageous, insane genocide run by serial killers. I was sexually assaulted when I went to Ashdod Port. I was taken behind a curtain, my clothes were taken off, fingers were put inside me, my breasts were groped, my backside was sort of pinched and dragged, and that was just the beginning of multiple humiliations and invasions and assault. And you know, as a survivor of child sexual abuse, it is just unfathomable that as a woman who is in her, you know, I'm 54, that was something that occurred when I went to Israel. So I just want to tell you that the things that we endured are real. Our medication was restricted, food and water. We were in the prison cell in Kisyot for 6 days. I was allowed out twice for 10 minutes. The cells are 6 meters by 3.5. I walked it out. They have capacity for 5 women, but there was 15 women in there. Nobody was given any menstrual napkins, and we were routinely woken up in the middle of the night with huge blasting lights, with Alsatians and 20 men in riot gear. And this went on and on and on and on. And something in terms of this ceasefire, there's this really pertinent slogan that was on the outside of the prison, and it said, "The eternal state will never forget, and it will pursue its enemies until the end." So this is what we're talking about, and this is their mantra. So don't believe for a moment that this ceasefire is going to mean the liberation of Palestine. Don't believe that it means that that Palestine will be free. So as ordinary people, I ask everybody in Australia to get on board, to force Albo, who has been so silent in this genocide, because, you know, he sells a lot of weapons to Israel, we know that. We need to sanction Israel and all of us living on the stolen land of this country and the genocide, the ongoing genocide that's still happening here. We have an even bigger moral duty to stand up for other vulnerable communities who are experiencing genocide, and they're experiencing it now. So thank you so much for listening to this truth telling, and yeah, I hope that more of us can finally liberate Palestine, because Palestine will be free.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abubakir Rafiq. I was one of the participants of Global Sumud Flotilla. The reason why I joined was I was just sick and tired of opening my phone every single day to find videos and photos of innocent children being slaughtered, being massacred in broad daylight. I was sick and tired of having to beg my government to act and to protect sacred life and to care about humanity. So when this opportunity came, I decided to take it. It was an honor to be part of this flotilla. There are several things I want to talk about, but I guess I want to highlight two main parts of my experience. When I first arrived at Ashford Court, I was interrogated. I was called a terrorist. I was humiliated, and during the interrogation process, I remained silent until a man who was about maybe 6'1", 6'2", very large, stands next to me, and he slams his hand on the table, and he looks me up and down, licking his lips with a predatory look on his face, saying, "You're going to have a lot of fun with me in prison." And when someone says this, especially someone who works for a state where sexual violence committed by soldiers and police officers and prison guards is so common, my first instinct was, I'm going to be raped by this man. And I've never felt that in my life. I've never in my life felt as though I was going to be a victim of sexual assault. But I felt it then and there. And I still remember his face, because I knew if I saw him in prison, I had to do whatever it takes to try to stay away from him. Innocent Palestinians are raped on the daily. This includes children. When you have a state who have live debates on TV whether police officers have the right to rape prisoners, this is what the state of Israel is. When I was brought to prison, I was first thrown into a 6x4 meter cage with 83 other men. And when I was looking outside of this prison, I noticed 3 police officers escorting 2 Palestinian prisoners. Their hands were chained, their feet were chained, and they were blindfolded. And when I was released out of prison, I was so happy that I was finally able to return home. But I initially thought, the first thing that came to my mind was, what about those 2 Palestinians that I saw that were brought to prison? What's going to happen to them? Are they still in prison? Have they been killed? Have they been assaulted? And unfortunately, this is the reality for 11,000 Palestinians who are still held in Israeli prisons, that are still being held as hostage. Hundreds of them children. 87% of them have not been charged with anything. These are hostages. And our work is not over. We are continuing to fight. We are continuing to advocate for the Palestinian cause. And we're continuing to demand our government to do something. going on this flotilla, I knew that we aren't going to stop the bloodshed. Baby formula is not going to prevent children from being sniped. It requires action. It requires sanctions. It requires our government to actually do something. So until our government does something and acts and protects human life, we will continue to fight, we will continue to advocate until every square inch of Palestine is free. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, understands well the horrors of the apartheid system in occupied Palestine and the brutal military occupation in occupied Palestine. We're talking about a man who was one of the founders of the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine here in Australia, in our colony. He is now in a position to do something meaningful for human rights and for justice and for peace in West Asia, but also in the world as a whole. It is a terrible irony that the countries that purport to care about liberal democratic values, a fair go, basic human dignity, are supporting and partners in the most brutal genocide that the world has seen live streamed into our rooms, into our homes every single day for 2 years. In a way that there has been horrors in history, but often when we see the horrors ourselves, when they're shared among the people, it's the thing that makes it stop. And we've been watching this for 2 years, and somehow the only country in the entire world that feels like it's going to do something to honor the Genocide Convention is Yemen. How are we allowing that to happen? How are we so weak and so cowardly and caring so little about the institutions of international law that hold up the possibility of peace globally? Now is the time more than ever that humans, that all of us need to push, need to lean into the movements, into the threads that we've built across the globe over these 2 years trying to stop the horror. But it's not just us. Now is the moment for bravery from our leaders. Albo, you're in a position where you can push in a way. We're a middle power. You can pretend that we have no effect on the rest of the world. But moments like this require courage from leaders like you, and you can push. You can cut ties with Israel, and you can encourage other countries our size and smaller to do the same, and it will create a ripple effect that can transform the possibilities of actual, genuine peace and dignity and justice and equality for all of the people in historic Palestine. If you care about our Jewish siblings there, our Muslim siblings there, our Christian siblings there, our atheist siblings there, you need to push for the end of this apartheid regime, the end of this genocidal regime that will continue to eliminate the possibility of Palestinian life until it is destroyed completely. There can be no peace for anybody on historic Palestine until the apartheid crumbles, one democratic state emerges, and people have the opportunity for true democracy, true equality, and peace together. And it requires you to push. And everybody else in our society, we need to find a way to lean into our capacities. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever your capacities happen to be. That might mean writing to and calling your representatives. It might mean pushing within the organizations that you exist and work and live within. It might include joining the BDS movement, downloading the No Thanks app, being careful where we put our resources. It might mean joining people in the streets at rallies and protests, going to film nights, educating yourself and your community, having this conversation of expanding the realms of the fight for justice, for Palestinian dignity, for the humanity of a people who have spent more than 100 years facing the most brutal colonial process that has genocide and ethnic cleansing built into its DNA. Anybody who's paying attention understands now that Israel is a genocidal terror state. And if you read the history, you will understand that the whole time that Israel has existed, it's been a genocidal terror state. And for 50 years before Israel was created, the Zionists who had the ideology to build the movement that would create the state of Israel in Palestine was planning it to be a genocidal terror state. It's in the DNA of the state. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with Judaism or Islam or Christianity or political beliefs. It is a colonial project that was designed to wipe off the indigenous population, steal the land, and be a European outpost in West Asia. We understand this, we know this, and we have to act on the basis of humanity in order to transform the horror that's on the ground there. We have an opportunity now, a historic opportunity for actual peace, for all the people, not just one side or another, for actual peace. But it's going to require all of us to push harder than we've pushed before. It is a beautiful moment to see Palestinians in Gaza have just a moment of reprieve, a moment to breathe without the overwhelming bombardment and violence. Of course, Palestinians were killed yesterday. More than 10 were killed yesterday by Israel. There's never been a moment in a pause in fighting, in a so-called truce, in the introductory moments to a ceasefire, that Israel has ceased fire. The militants within Palestine have, but Israel has killed Palestinians every single day, even in these pauses. Knowing that, we can also appreciate how important it is for Palestinians to just have a slight reprieve from the intensity of the horrific genocidal violence that has been waged against them. But we also know that the US and Israel are not honest brokers in these agreements. And a best case scenario where war criminals from the other side of the world are brought in to administer the population is not a pathway towards peace for anybody, or justice, or equality, which is a basic requirement that all humans deserve, and that we are in a historic opportunity to create on the ground by pushing, supporting the movements within Palestine, and finding a way towards actual democracy on the ground. Thank you. We experienced, as Juliet was describing, as Abubakir was describing, we experienced some violence, some sexual violence, some humiliation, not being allowed food or showers or we were allowed food, not being allowed water or showers or medicine. But we were in Ketziot prison in the Nakab Desert, where Israelis torture Palestinian prisoners to death. Palestinian prisoners are raped to death in Ketziot prison. And that needs to be the takeaway from Ketziot prison in Israel, where Palestinians are raped and tortured to death, rather than our relatively minor violence that we experienced. It's a place where these people who were killed are often not charged with a crime, who are there on administrative detention, are stolen from their families in the night, and they never return.
What sort of injury do you have?
Do we have any other questions?
Was it anything to do with you being detained?
It was. I had my shoulder pulled out of its socket, and I had 2 ribs broken before we were taken into prison for processing.
Now that you're on home soil, what support are you expecting from the Albanese government?
What support are they required to give? What support are we wanting from the government, or are we expecting? Like, the support that we're expecting is absolutely nothing. I was on a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea in the European Economic Zone that was hit by a drone attack. I had a bomb explode like a meter and a half above my head, and the response from the government was not to check if I was okay, but to tell us that we shouldn't be in violent waters doing something. But like, the reason that the waters close to Gaza are violent are because we're a partner in in the Holocaust of the Palestinian people there. And we were in Europe, we're in Mediterranean waters. It's a ridiculous situation, the way that they've responded to the 6 Australians who were involved in this mission, and 10 who were involved in different parts of the mission. Obviously, we would like them to support us, to look out for our safety, but unfortunately, it hasn't happened that way.
So were the Israelis
They were responsible for my injuries. They will, whether they're held accountable is a whole nother thing. I'm not going to focus on the violence that happened to me. In a place where Palestinians are tortured to death and raped to death, I don't think that that's appropriate.
Cameron, you spoke about the disconnect here with politicians and media. do you feel like your message now is falling on deaf ears after the ceasefire? Like that disconnect would widen rather than people actually heeding or understanding what is happening, especially in the eyes of the world. It's done.
Yep.
But do you see that disconnect actually, or that gulf being widened?
No, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. The disconnect is reducing, and it will continue to reduce as a result of processes like the flotilla that foreground this issue. The disconnect was much greater 5 years ago, 10 years ago, particularly before social media. Social media has helped this disconnect reduce. It's enabled a lot of the segments of Australian population, British population, American population to actually see the truth of the situation, that Israel is